Now that you have your supplies, let's go over the basics of cross-stitching. There's a lot of talk online about the right or wrong way to cross-stitch, but honestly, as long as you're enjoying the hobby and creating projects that you're proud of, then that's all that matters. A lot of it really comes down to personal preference. Let's start with the threads. Embroidery floss comes with 6 strands. Most people use 2 or 3 strands when stitching. I personally prefer using 3 strands because I don't like to see the Ida fabric peeking through. Here's a quick comparison of 2 strands versus 3 strands. For this video, I'll be using 3 strands since that's what I usually work with. The first method is how I learned when I started, and honestly, I haven't seen many people do it this way. The Ida fabric has threads running in 2 directions. I thread my needle under one layer, leave a small tail, then go under and around twice. On the second loop around, I leave a small loop, thread my needle through it, and pull it tight to secure it. Then I trim the tail. I find this way the most reliable when securing, but you just have to be careful, especially when you're not stitching over this part because it can sometimes show on the other side. The second method is a loop start. This is really common with 2 strands, and there are lots of tutorials online for it. For 3 strands, I start by going through the fabric from the front, then come back around while holding onto the tail. I go through the same hole again and leave a small loop. Then I go down to the bottom corner, come up through the hole, go diagonally, pull the thread through the loop, and go back down through the hole. Then I trim the tail. The third method I only use when I'm working on a row with more than 5 stitches. I tie a knot at the end of my thread and come up through the fabric about 4 or 5 stitches away from where I want to start. I stitch normally towards the knot, and once I reach it, I make sure that the thread is secure, then I cut the knot off and continue stitching. Now for the actual cross stitch. It's very simple. You're just making X's over and over again to create a design. How you make your X is up to you, but the important thing is consistency. You want all your stitches to go in the same direction. That means the top and bottom stitch of every X should always face the same way. If they're mixed, your project can look messy. You can either complete one X at a time or do rows. Doing one X at a time can take longer, but it's totally up to you. I personally like working in rows, and I usually stitch from right to left. I start from the top right hole, go down to the bottom left, and then on the way back, I go from the top left to the bottom right. Then I just repeat that pattern. Now for securing your thread at the end. The first method is similar to how I secure my thread at the start. I go under the top layer of the Ida twice, leaving a loop on the second pass. Then I go under one more time, pass my needle through the loop, pull tight, and then trim the excess. The second method is weaving your thread under the stitches at the back. I personally find this one a bit harder, and I've heard it's not always the most secure, so I don't use it often, but I see others use it a lot. There's also a method called parking where you leave your thread and stitch over it later, but I'm not very familiar with it. There are definitely tutorials out there if you want to learn about that method. And that's pretty much all the basics of stitching and anchoring.